Maryland sports fans, there's only one sports book in the great state of Maryland with over 50 years experience booking bets and supporting customers. Betfred Sportsbook at Longshots is now open and is the only sportsbook in Frederick offering cash betting on football, basketball, world soccer, and more. Visit the Betfred Sportsbook at I-270 and MD-85 in Frederick, right next to Longshots off-track betting. Go to betfredsports.com for more information and your chance to win exclusive merchandise. Must be 21 or older. Play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Well. It's us, Courtney and Amy. I'm gonna let you finish.
Preferred pronouns, Courtney and Amy.
Yeah, exactly. Pantheon podcast fam, what's up? So, do you know what this week is?
It's Courtney and Amy decide to really pick our little brains and think of things that we love that we don't talk about enough. Is that
and my birthday.
Okay.
And that, but yeah, that too. Both. So because it's my birthday week, we decided we don't care what's happening in the world. We're just going to talk about some artists and albums that we feel like have been overlooked. Some could be good, some could be bad. We love them. So let's go. Amy?
Oh, none of them are bad. Wait a minute.
Well, you know me.
Unless you talk about a Pia Zadora record, then yes.
I have some selections that I love that are,
What is that? Oh, bless her heart. All right.
I know that I feel like need a second chance at love. So, when you think about your favorite bands, right? And not the ones that we always talk about, PSB and all of that stuff. Like, who are some of the ones that you feel like don't get enough love and attention in the music landscape today?
Well, it's funny because I'll start with something I thought of initially, but I don't want to go into a deep dive, and then I'll go into a deep dive with the one. Traffic is a group that I grew up with. They were very much a part of my childhood. And yes, I know that they are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So obviously I am not talking about some underground, this is where, well, it's not where we're introduced to Stevie Winwood. He was his second group, but it was him, Dave Mason, Jim Capaldi. I just briefly wanted to talk about them, and then I'll get into Scritti Politti, because I think Traffic is what made Traffic fascinating to me, and why I still listen to them, is that they could go from Low Sparkle High Heeled Boys, which is kind of, rock, but, on a very kind of expansive level, then to John Barleycorn Must Die, which very much ties into the British Celtic tradition of folk music. So they're kind of all over the place, but in a really good way. And for my money, Steve Winwood, he was Stevie back then because he was a prodigy. He was a teenager. Is one of the best vocalists that ever lived. So again, Traffic is not some underground. I'm assuming everybody listening to them heard of Traffic, but they get. You
can't really assume that, because I think that maybe some older people don't really talk about Traffic.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And I think that there's older rock guys and people from that generation who might be like, yes. But I think if you go to the average person and ask them to name you 5 Traffic songs, they can't.
Right. I think thank you. So you are kind of making the point. I think that they're acknowledged in the sense that they did get the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame kind of, stamp of approval, but they're not when you're name checking groups. Yes. And I think part of it is because they didn't have a distinct sound other than the fact that they brought in elements of jazz, brought in rock, Celtic. All right. So that's my short one. The one I really want to go into that I just feel like is criminally overlooked, even though they had a top 10 single, is Scritti Politti. Scritti Politti is in essence just Green Garside, who is the lead singer. And what's really interesting about Scritti Politti is my first introduction to them was in 1979. They were a post-punk band out of England on Rough Trade Records. They were very much not commercial. They were hugely political. I believe they may have been Marxist or even communist, and they very much were coming out of that same world that like Gang of Four came out of. A very, if you were to listen to Scritti Politti of 1977, you wouldn't even know it was the same group. So a very influenced by punk, but not in a catchy Sex Pistols way. But just an interesting group. All right, so they do that, and Green Gartside again is the main guy. And then they may have put out smaller stuff. I wasn't aware of it, but in 1985 they sort of come back, and this is the song and the era where most of us became familiar with them, which is Cupid and Psyche 85.
Yeah, that's when I became aware of them with Would Bees Pray Like Aretha Franklin. Right. I love that song.
And Perfect Way.
Yeah.
And Perfect Way. So now they are...
And that was on... What soundtrack was that on? Because that really helped with... Perfect Way was on a soundtrack, which really...
It's very possible.
In a moment.
And so now you have them very much tapping into a New York City kind of sound, a la what New Order did, a very electro-pop kind of sound. And suddenly Green Gartside, who has a really lovely falsetto, a kind of like a soulful falsetto, is singing in the upper range. And now you've got, I think the album was recorded in New York, but now you have a very pop-friendly synth pop record, which if you watch the Sparks documentary, you can see the trajectory from Sparks to this. So this is like a big hit record. It establishes them. He then appears on the BEF, British Electric Foundation compilation, which is the guys from Heaven 17, and he does the most exquisite version of Stevie Wonder's I Don't Know Why I Love You. It's just every time I have heartache, I listen to it. Okay, they disappear for 7 years again. And then he comes back with an album, late 80s, but it's not really a big hit. And then in 1999, he comes back with the record. And again, it's pretty much just him at this point, which to me is...
He had a lot of past members, so I can't even keep up who was actually...
That's what I'm saying. It's pretty much like him and somebody. You know what I mean? In 99, he comes back with a record, which for my money is one of the best albums ever made, full out. And it's called Anami and Bonhami. And it features Michelle Ndegeocello, Mos Def, when he was still going under the name Mos Def. It's rock, it's funk, it's hip hop. I actually sort of friendly with Michelle and a lot of friends of friends, and I saw her once, and I said to her, I love the stuff you did on that album, and she said that was one of my most favorite sessions ever to do. So that is a great record. Never sold anything, but I think you would love it, Courtney. It is.
My friend Raquel is obsessed with Scritti Politti. She
and that album
loves Scritti Politti.
Even Scritti Politti means, I believe, it's sort of an Italian Marxist term. So, but anyway, it's one of my favorite albums. I mean, it is not, and it's these beautiful soulful vocals, these kind of funk hip hop beats. And then in '99, the last record, they also put out a greatest hits, or sort of a rewind to the older stuff, which is great. And in 2006, he puts out White Bread, Black Beer. Just great. So what I love about them, I love his voice, but I just love the fact that I love bands that sort of like read the room without redecorating the room. You know what I mean? Like he sort of is keeping abreast of what's going on, but it never sounds like somebody pretending to be something they're out. So he's a great songwriter, great singer, and I just cannot, I mean, if you have to pick up one record, pick up Anomi, and I'm probably mispronouncing it, and Bonami, but they were much more than Perfect Way and Would Be. And those are great songs.
Those are great songs, but they're not even
ended there.
Yeah, but the thing about it is those two songs are so not indicative of their catalog, you know what I mean?
Right.
So they have those hits, and I think part of the issue was nothing else. People, when you have a hit, especially at that time in the music industry, they want everything to kind of follow in that vein and figure that thing. They're like that period of everything but the girl. Every album was so different. It's like Scritti Politti. It's hard to say what kind of music they were because each album was just, I love that they explored sounds and textures.
Pet Shop Boys. I mean, we said but the same thing. I mean, that's the stuff that we love. You can have a signature sound without being tied down to it.
Right.
And so I just love them. So I always go back and listen to that album. So that's my first one. So I'm bracing myself.
Well, my first one is a group based out of Pennsylvania and New York, and that's Book of Love. And Book of Love started in 1983.
Okay, hold on. What the fuck? Whoa.
The thing is, I think that they have been largely forgotten. Yeah. And they were a group back, their reign was from, they're back performing. They reformed in like 2013. But in 1983, this was a group especially on their first album and in their subsequent albums, they were talking about sexual identity and gender roles and all of the things that we kind of call queer and it's under that umbrella now. That's what they were talking about in 1980, you know what I mean, in the 1980s. And I just think that their music is the kind of music that was always appreciated like by music supervisors. So it was used on film and different stuff, but they never really had a commercial success. And when you're a band like that and you're singing, especially back then, about anything that had to do with gender identity or sexuality, all their hits basically were on the dance chart. I was
going to ask you, I mean, because I'm having sort of a visual in my mind. Were they on Sire? Were they one of those?
Yes,
groups?
they were on. They were on. That's just it. They were on major labels. You know what I mean? Yeah. They were on Warner Brothers, Sire. They were not an indie label, and they have great music. That first album, they were on Sire, Reprise, Warner Brothers, and that first album was amazing.
Yeah, Scritti Politti was on Atlantic and Virgin. So these are not scrambling underground labels. Yeah.
No, these are like real artists doing real things. And I think people should dig back into the catalog. Wow. Past Boy, which everybody knows because 16 years after its original release, it was remixed for the clubs by Peter Rayhofer and became a huge international club record. And, people know Roses, but they really, if you dig in, they're Pretty Boys and Pretty Girls is talking about the AIDS epidemic. They were talking about things that a lot of people get credit for speaking about now, but they were in the forefront, but because they had no hits.
Right.
But they're one of those bands that has a following. When they do shows, people come to their shows, but they don't have that level of acclaim that I think they should have within the gay community because they were really out there talking about.
They didn't have a big video presence,
you know what I mean?
Which was really key back then too, right?
They did have videos, but again, when you get treated almost like the niche act because of what you're talking about,
right,
your rotation is going to be different than Madonna, who was a provocateur, but she was the queen at that point. She was new. She was the moment. So you're not going to not play her stuff. And she was pushing that envelope. But when you're the smaller act and pushing that envelope, it can almost seem a little too queer and weird at the time. So you get the weird times where your video is playing. Or this is when local video shows, which I used to work local video when I first got to Columbia, become very important because they were the ones to help break those acts. And remember the good old days of college radio. Book of Love would be what we would call a college radio act, that all of those records would be sent to the college.
Well, I mean, and then it's one thing to be a highly fuckable straight white woman talking about those issues and a bunch of queer guys. I mean, that's the reality, is that somebody is going to deliver a message. It's the same reason why Bronski Beat only had one hit, or the Comment Arts only had. There's a limit to how much, no matter how open-minded people are, who they want to hear the message from. Wow, I haven't heard that name in a really long time, so I'm going to have to go back and
Go back and dig in, like and dig past "I Touch Roses" and "Boy." Everybody knows that. You know what I mean?
It's one of those groups I think as soon as I hear it, I'm going to remember, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anything.
Because no one talks about
as soon as I hear it.
And Ted is great. I've met him through Bill because, everybody knows Bill.
Everybody knows Bill. That's going to be the name of our new sitcom.
It's going to be called Everybody Knows Bill. It's true. Mention his name and it was like, oh my God, I love Bill. I'm like, we're like, yes, we know.
Yeah, we know Bill. Okay. Friend of Bill. That's what they call people in AA.
Right, friend of Bill.
We're friends of Bill, but without that part of it.
Right.
All right, so I do have a sort of soft spot. Well, it's not even like, I do have a soft spot for soul music and for R&B, and I do harbor a sort of soft spot for the way that the Brits kind of look at it and tweak it. And we did a show on this, like sort of the way that the British handle, what is considered a pretty American genre, which is R&B and soul. So in 2007, there's a young Scottish singer, Paolo Nutini, who I always assumed was Italian, but he's Scottish, which is kind of, I guess, ridiculous thinking that if you're from Scotland, you can't be from somebody else.
Right.
And he was sort of pegged as a next big thing, like him, and then a little later on, James Morrison. You remember James Morrison?
Yes.
You hear his music all the time in like supermarkets, which is or Target or something like that. Anyway, so Paolo Nutini was not only pegged as the next big thing, he was given the blessings of Ahmet Ertegun, who was the then head of Atlantic Records, or maybe he wasn't still head of Atlantic, but he was one of the most powerful and influential tastemakers in music and predominantly in Black American music, but Atlantic Records. So he put out a record, Paolo Nutini, called These Streets in 2007. And there was a single called Rewind, which is sort of a mid-tempo, the title track. And then the big sort of hit, and I'm using big qualitatively because he was always bigger in Europe and in England and in Scotland, was New Shoes, which is kind of a weird song because it's kind of this poppy, weird kind of, it's sort of kind of an odd song to become a single. What makes him compelling to me, and he went like platinum, multiple platinum, again, mainly overseas, but platinum is platinum. What makes him compelling to me, and where you really see it in his record Caustic Love in 2014, this is a kid who fucking can sing. I mean, it's a very weird line that white singers who are influenced by Black music have to tread. You have to show your influences without mimicking. You know what I mean? You don't want to be that person who is so clearly, desperately trying to get in cred. And he was always very interesting for me because he very much came out of that soulful rock category, but he was never trying too hard. He wasn't lumped in with the whole neo soul, but yet he was very soulful. And Caustic, he disappeared for a long time. I've read that he, is very anxious. We've talked about that. He was someone who didn't like performing live, had problems, with live performance and success. He comes back in 2014, with Caustic Love, which is a great record, which was completely overlooked. And it has the song Iron Sky, which if you can find the live version of it, there's like an recorded Abbey Road version. It's just like super powerful singing. And number one in the UK, he won an Ivor Novello Award for songwriting, which is the award that Amy Winehouse wrote. So this is like the serious songwriting award. And he was nominated for 3 Brits. So Paolo Nutini, and he's really cute. I know that has nothing to do with anything, but I just figured I'd throw that out there, which doesn't hurt. I mean, if you're going to listen to somebody, they might as well be nice to look at too. But great singer, just an undersung. So he's worth checking out.
My next one is a Harlem-born singer who I don't feel like people talk enough about when we have conversations about great vocalists, and it's Patty Austin.
Good for you.
Patty,
Thank you. Here,
Patty,
I'm gonna clap for you.
Patty Austin to me it's hard to call her underappreciated because she's had a very long career and she's sang so many different genres, but people need to give Patty Austin her flowers. That woman is her vocals are just
pristine.
They're pure and they're beautiful. Her Quincy Jones produced album, Every Home Should Have One, is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's when I think most people, because she's been around for a while, she's been a background singer, session singer, jazz vocalist. She's had songs when she was a teenager. But this was the one I think, with Baby Come to Me, her duet with James Ingram, that shot her to the top of the pop charts. Right. And then they had the other duet, How Do You Keep the Music Playing, I believe it was. But Patty Austin needs to be spoken about. And I'm going to give it to a couple of Black ladies in this and put them together as vocalists. And I hope people remember and go back into their catalogs. Patty Austin, Angela Wimbush, who wrote and produced for other artists and produced her stuff, does not get enough of her flowers. And another amazing work, Shirley Murdoch, who was an amazing, and Vesta Williams, amazing
great
vocalists who are not spoken about enough when we talk about great singers. And I hope that people, especially if you love really great R&B, and I'm not going to even diss today's R&B singers, right? Because I do believe there are some really good young singers. But when you listen to these women's voices, it's different than a lot of these girls today. There's a richness, there's a deepness, and they all sound very uniquely different. Like it's like what you said on one of our earlier shows when we were talking about the Normani song, and I was talking about how I liked it, and you were like, "Yes, I do too." But if I heard that, I wouldn't know that was her. And I get that because I liked it, seeing it first with the visual, and it connects me to the song. But I wouldn't know that was her if I just heard it on the radio, because that could be a lot of those girls.
Yeah.
But if I hear Patty Austin's voice on something, I'm like, that's Patty Austin. You know what I mean? If I hear Shirley Murdoch's voice on something, I'm like, that's Shirley Murdoch. Like, these women all sounded different. And Patty, to me, is just, she had the Quincy stamp of approval. They say that her godparents were Quincy Jones and Dinah Washington. Not to, I mean, that's a circle.
And she's on that big Quincy, what was the name of that? Back on the Block, right? Yes,
she's on that album. And The Dude. And those moments are kind of when people really started saying, who's this woman in her vocals? She sang Razzmatazz and I want people to go back and dig into Patty's albums, especially her Every Home Should Have One and the Patty Austin album. And literally her cover and single of Alison Moyet's Honey for the Bees is great. And she sounds great on it.
I think it's funny because I'm thinking, as you're talking, I'm talking about Patty Austin, I'm thinking about Mickey Howard, I'm thinking about Regina Bell. I think these women, I mean, this is very much, I always say that there's Black music that gets steered commercial, aka white, and then there's Black music that, and it's not a bad thing, but stays in a kind of lane where it's appreciated by a more select audience. And I think all of those women, Patty Austin, Phyllis Hyman, all of these women, there was a maturity to them even when they were younger. Mm-hmm. And
Angela Bofill.
All of them. And it's a jazzier influence. Mm-hmm. It is not made for dance music. Yeah.
Even though they do, all of them have each done up-tempo moments and given you that moment. But what it is with these ladies is, you can tell they are singers. They're not following trends.
They're not singers.
They're not making albums being like, all right, well, I need the hottest producers because I need to do this. They're not being like, throw the latest rap. And listen, I get there's some people, that is what they had to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like no one did that better for a period than, Mary. But Mary was kind of in a hip hop lane. But Mariah especially those early hip hop collaborations, she did it right? But then it became almost like the standard after that. Do you remember there was that whole period in R&B where everybody had to have a rapper on their song?
Oh God,
it's like
of
you
course.
just couldn't have an
I mean, that was
moment.
like, that was your ticket to success, you know? It was like, so these women, I mean, these are, oh God, we could do a whole this on that. I mean, Angela Winbush alone, for Christ's sake, she produced the Isley Brothers, okay? Is she still married to Ronald Isley, or she was married to Ronald Isley?
I don't think that they're not married anymore, but
Renee and Angela, I mean, come on.
She produced Janet Jackson's first album.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just.
I want to get, so, I'm sorry, continue. Yeah.
Which I say to Janet fans, songs like Young Love in that beginning that still holds a place in our heart. And it's like, you think about her being a Black woman at that time producing, and we need to do a real show on female producers, because there's so many that have been producing for a long time, and people make it into this oxymoron of women writing and producing. But there are groups of women, like, people don't realize Cheryl Lynn was producing her albums. You know what I mean? There were women like Bobby Gentry was writing and producing her. So I want us to really get into that, because I think there's this thing where people don't realize women have been turning it out and chiming it out for a minute.
But gee, I wonder why they don't get the recognition. Let me think. Hold on. It'll come to me. Wait, why don't women get the recognition and are treated to a different standard than men? I don't know. Let me think about it. I'll call you later if it comes to me. Let me think if I can think about it. Well, it's really funny. I was going to mention. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue. So,
no. So I, you know what I mean? It's like I want these ladies, especially these Black women, who have these phenomenal voices, who had hits at a period of time. We don't talk about them anymore. It's like we go through who are the best. Yes, we know Whitney Houston was an amazing singer. We know those
women,
but she wasn't the only amazing singer.
You know who I was thinking about, because I saw her someplace? Leela James. Remember her?
That's a singing girl.
That's a singing girl,
honey.
That is a singing girl.
She sings. And, that's another one you're disappointed. She was on Warner Brothers, and
she was going to be the next big thing.
And a lot of times when those first albums don't work, unfortunately with Black artists, especially who fall in the R&B lane, Black women, they don't get that second chance. And then you're kind of like, maybe you get a second album, maybe they put it out, maybe they don't. Then you start that, maybe independent or going down the road.
There's so many of them. Well, absolutely. It's so funny. As you were talking, there were two groups I was going to talk about, but suddenly I want to go way left field for a second, because I was going to talk about the Divinyls, but I mean, the Divinyls, they're a great group and stuff, and UnderSung, but
I had pulled out. It's so funny that you said that, because I was like, maybe I should talk about this in this album.
All right, well then hold it, because I want to chime in about the Divinyls. But I just decided, because I was thinking about him the other day, to talk about Amp Fiddler.
Oh, wow.
Yay, I got the reaction I wanted. Okay. So Amp Fiddler, first off, one of the great names ever, one of the great stage names ever. So Amp Fiddler is a Detroit guy, was always he's very instrumental in sort of helping to mold the Detroit hip hop scene. Jay Dilla, he was a mentor to a lot of these guys. People probably first became familiar with him, or I did, in 1990. He had a group called Mr. Fiddler with his brother, with an album called With Respect, which I love this album so much. And this is like astounding. I couldn't find my copy of it anywhere, and I actually bought it. I never do that. I never buy CDs.
Right.
And it was sort of like a Dr. Buzzard-ish kind of vibe, like, gangster kind of, like fun, playful 40s, 50s. So he's a multi-instrumentalist. He's a singer. He's a songwriter. He played for years in George Clinton's In Parliament Funkadelic. He was a keyboard player. Like the nicest guy in Nicetown. His next, so that's 1990. Then he put out Waltz of a Ghetto Fly, which is a great album, which did well in the UK, but not amazing. He works with Raphael Sadiq. He works with a lot of people. Afro Strut in 2006, again, gets attention in the UK, nothing here. Then he puts out a record in 2008 called Inspiration Information with Sly and Robbie, who are the consummate reggae rhythm section.
Yeah.
So that's great. He's made a bunch of records since. He's got Motor City Booty. He has stayed. I guess his biggest single, and I'm saying this biggest single in the world that we live in, would be I Believe in You, which very much kind of has, it's just, I can't describe his movement, which I guess I should, because that's what I was paid to do at some point. But he's a producer, he's a songwriter, he's a keyboard player, he's a singer, he's funk, soul, dance, electronic. He worked with the band Enchantment. He worked with, like I said, Parliament Funkadelic, and I saw him perform. Oh, this is why he came up, because I met somebody who used to work at SOBs, and I remember seeing him at SOBs, which was the size of a
I used to love
car.
seeing shows at SOBs. Yeah. It's great.
He was fucking phenomenal. He was great. I mean, he's just up there, and he got this nice little band and stuff. So I just sort of thought about him. I went, Amp Fiddler is somebody who, if you know him, you know him. If you don't know him, you should know him. You know, just a very behind the scenes guy, and I've always liked him a lot. So he's someone definitely worth checking out.
Well, my next one is someone who was part of a very famous band, but didn't really have the solo success and that girl should have.
JC Chavez.
No, but close. It does begin with a J. It's Jane Wiedlin. I'm a big Jane Wiedlin fan.
I just saw that documentary the other day, by the way. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did see it. Mm-hmm.
Fucking great.
Yeah, I'm a big Jane Wiedlin fan. And I think that, you know, her solo work has been a little bit shit on, you know. Blue Kiss was a great song. Blue Kiss should have been a hit, and it wasn't. The first album should have been a hit. She never really had a hit album. You know, she had one hit song with Rush Hour, which was from the second album.
And Cool Places.
But it wasn't really a hit. That was the thing. It wasn't really a hit for her. And I, you know, for her third album, she had this song called World on Fire, which I love, 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 love. I just love her. And I think that she's gotten, you know, the albums haven't really brought out what I think is the best of her talents, because she's an extremely talented person. And I think when you go back and you listen to some of them, you could tell a little bit the producers were trying to fit her into a mold sometimes.
Yeah.
But I love her voice. I think the solo work is unappreciated. And I still will pull out, you know, Goodbye Cruel World, and Sometimes You Really Get on My Nerves, and you know,
I'm trying to look where Cool Places, because I know it was on. I mean, she did American Bandstand, so that always kind of makes me. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think for women, look, I mean, I think for women, and I could just stop the sentence right there. But she came out of, you know, she left the Go-Go. She quit the Go-Go. So that is something significant, to quit a band when they're really, really doing
but she also came out after Belinda's solo, and you know how they usually go with bands, because I've worked in that situation. If they let one be a hit, especially at radio, they're really, especially back then, it was really shady. It's like, well, we're not, two of you guys can't be a hit.
Right.
And we already have the hit.
Well, because she was, you know, Belinda was the front person. And she was very, and I think also Jane, I like Jane Wiedlin too, but I think her persona was sort of kind of cutesy, and I don't know if they thought they could do the same. I don't know. She also co-wrote Our Lips Are Sealed with Terry Hall.
Yeah,
so, and that's a fantastic song.
And, you know, she wrote a bunch of things, and, you know, and got her share of the publishing for writing those things, and that caused a little bit of tension too. But, you know, when you write something.
Well, her and Charlotte Cathy. Oh, yeah, that's the best part. That documentary is, I'm just looking, that documentary is like so, I'm just looking here like to see, like, all right, Our Lips Are Sealed went to number 20. And then Cool Places, solo career, she had 4 albums. Wow, I didn't know that.
See, that's the thing. Nobody realizes she had 4 albums.
Yeah. She was in another band, maybe because it was a duet with Sparks. Maybe Sparks gets the credit for the success of Cool Places. Not the credit in the terms that they wrote it, but because she's a featured artist on it. Right. So they might list it as, because it was certainly Sparks' biggest single in this country. No, oh, that's a really cool record. Yeah, she's cool. Well, I want to talk about Texas, not the state, because the state of Texas is
Once in a lifetime Texas.
Once in a lifetime Texas, and Say What You Want Texas, and In Our Lifetime, yes, Summer Sun. The state of Texas is horrible. The band Texas is another Scottish group. What's in the water in Scotland? Home of Franz Ferdinand too. So Texas is, again, a group that's a group, but mainly one person, who is Charlene Spiteri. Wonderful vocals. They've been around since 1989.
Didn't they put out a new album recently? Their first one in years?
They're still kind of back. I first became aware of them. I was overseas. It's one of those groups, again, really big in Europe. They had a hit here. In Our Lifetime was in 1999, was an MTV hit. Very beautiful woman, played guitar, wrote the material, great sound. So they had 1989 Stateside, and then probably their bigger album was 1997 White on Blonde, with Say What You Want. The Hush in 99 is In Our Lifetime, and Summer Sun. And they have come back over the years. I think that she got married and had a kid, and focused on real life for a while, and decided to come back. They're a band you'll see pop up on like Jules Holland's show. And I just always thought again, that voice, there are certain voices, her voice, Christina Amphlett from the Divinyls, it's them. There is no denying that that's Charlene Spiteri. There's no denying that's Christina Amphlett. There's no denying there's Chrissy Hine. Certain singers, but we're talking about women, just like, boom, that's that. And I cannot be mad at anybody who carves out a signature. So they're a good kind of new wave, post-new wave rock band with very much with pop sensibilities. And so Texas, not the state. We hate the state of Texas right now, but the band Texas. So a great, and named in homage to the mythical images of Texas. So yeah, I like them a lot.
Well, my last thing is, listen, this is not a great album.
Oh my God. You're not, it's not me, it's you.
It's not a great album. It is an artist who deserved better, but I always think it is worth a go back listen, because it's an artist in peak form of her voice. And that is Mary Wilson's 1979 solo album for Motown, where you really kind of feel like she got fucked over by Motown, because the whole album is, all the music and lyrics are written by Frank Busey and Jean Duarte.
Who?
Exactly, right?
Okay.
So, and I'm sure there are producers and writers that people know, but it was a disco album. And it was a disco album that was released literally a month after the big Kaminsky Park disco sucks, disco is dead. So she got caught in the moment of her first solo record coming with the backlash to disco music. So it never stood a chance.
What year was the album?
1979.
And then a year later, her former bandmate Diana Ross comes out with a dance record, but with Chic.
Right. And so the thing is, it's good because her voice sounds so great. Mm-hmm. It's like bad disco songs. She has this one, Red Hot, where you're like, okay, and that was the single. You're like, you're Mary Wilson. Why are you singing this? Like, why didn't they give her better material? But I think people should check it out just to hear her voice in great shape. It's like those 70s Aretha's records that weren't hits, but it was probably during the peak of her vocal power. So there's some songs that are shitty songs, but she sounds so great and her voice is so powerful. It's hard. Like the La Diva album. That album's pretty terrible, but her voice is so in top form that there's some great songs on there because she is at her vocal peak.
A great artist can elevate shitty material.
You know what I mean? In 1979. So I think people should check it out again, just to give a little redemption to Mary, because, a lot of people don't know, when we think of songs like Someday We'll Be Together, Diana Ross and the Supremes aren't singing on that song. People don't realize that. That was supposed to be, actually, it was recorded as it was supposed to be her first solo song, and that's when they threw it on that album to have her a hit. And Love Child, the Supremes aren't, the Motown backup singers are singing that. They're not singing on those songs. So I think we should give Mary some love. I think go back and listen to her solo work, because we definitely know this is her. And, you know, there are a couple of gems on here. Like if you like a good sassy disco song 80 years later, Pick Up the Pieces, or You Make Me Feel So Good, or things like,
even the titles are giving me agita.
Wait,
yeah.
Midnight Dancer.
Ooh. I wonder how long it took them to come up with that.
I've Got What You Need. So you know.
There you go.
So we gotta give it to Miss Mary. We gotta give it up for her.
I mean, in Mary's defense, she wasn't sleeping with the head of the label.
Right. So right.
You know, she was the better singer. We all know this, that her and Florence and then Cindy were the better singers. But you know, she didn't bite her tongue. So I'm sure when it came down for her contractually obligated solo record, they were like, here's my third cousin on my uncle's side of the family.
That's what
They'll
it
write
feels.
you a couple songs.
That's actually what it feels like. Well, and the original thing was Marvin Gaye was supposed to write and produce her album, I believe. And then something happened and he couldn't do it. Something happened.
Okay.
No, it wasn't the coke, but something actually, I can't remember what was
That's
it
a weird,
happened.
wow. That's crazy.
And then I think it was Smokey Robinson was also supposed to do it, and something happened. But you know, that was back when he was writing the hits. Like, I'm sorry, she needed you know what I'm saying? Diana, even though Diana's first album, solo album, the first songs, you know, didn't all the way blow up, but Mary Deserves Better. We should all check this record out. It's been released in an expanded edition with remixes and things. So I'm afraid.
Oh, good, because I want to hear a longer version of the song you said
called Red Hot. I've Got What You Need.
Oh, Lord have mercy. All right. On that note, hopefully we have, you know, there's nothing more that two people who love music love to talk about than music. We really don't want to talk about the world because we hate the world. We love music. So I hope everybody, you know, check some of these artists out. I mean, we could do shows like this every month because there's always somebody that, you know, didn't get the love. You know, the people, we love stuff that's commercial, non-commercial hit. We just love music. So thank you for that, Courtney.
And on these R&B nights, y'all just go back there, dig out some Patty Austin. Like, she's good if you're at the beach house. She's good if you're playing music in the morning and you're cooking and the kids are outside, or you're sitting chilling and you got some wine going and you roll a spliff and you put on Miss Patty Austin. You have a full moment. She'll give you a life. And if you're feeling a little randy and you want some girl rock, dig into Jane Wheatland. She had some good shit. She really did. And dig back into Book of Love and have your queer, all of the, there's so much out there.
Scritti Politti, you know, a great fusion of dance, pop, rock, all these groups.
Dub, it's a good hodgepodge.
All these groups, you know, the best thing you can say about somebody is that they're both familiar but not redundant. And all these artists brought their own thing. All right, give them our beautiful tagline because you do this like nobody else.
Well, you guys know, please follow us weekly on our Instagram at ImmaLetYouFinish NY or our Twitter for all of you people who are really angry at the world at Finish Ima. And if you're like us and your AARP showed up without you applying for it, follow us on Facebook at ImmaLetYouFinish, all one word. And
the funeral plot, the thing for funerals.
Right, and the things for funeral plot. That was like, I don't know, this is a generational gay thing, and my American gays will all know this. You never sign up for it. But if all of a sudden, in the 80s and the 90s, all of a sudden, the men's shopping magazine, International Mail, just starts showing up at your house. It's like it's the first time. I don't know if there was a mental scan. If you walked into a gay bar or something, all of a sudden, there's something you never signed up from, and everybody be like, I have a friend who used to order things from there. You're like, I got the shirt and I got these pants.
It was the same thing for Victoria's Secret for women because I never signed up for that.
All of a sudden, it was like, how am I getting this? And then I'd be looking at the bulges of the band. But that's a whole other story.
Please.
So, you know the deal. Follow us weekly. We're also on the main feed of the Pantheon Podcast Network, where there are a lot of other amazing music shows. You like music, there's a scripted or non-scripted show for you. Just every subject, every type of music. So remember to go to Pantheon Podcast. They're also on Facebook and on the web and on IG, on Twitter. Follow us. We're everywhere. You know, you can listen to us on iHeart, on Google, on Deezer, on Spotify, on Apple, just Megaphone. We're everywhere. We appreciate you. We love you. It's my birthday this week, so it's a COVID, so, you know, no turn up, but I will turn up by getting a mani-pedi, and that will be my turn up. Love you guys. We'll see you next week. Deuces.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package, with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's FantasyPoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. FantasyPoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.